Two people get hit with the exact same crisis on the exact same day. Same bad news. Same collapse of a plan they had built their whole future around. One of them falls apart completely, unable to function for weeks, replaying it, drowning in it. The other one goes quiet for an hour, feels the full weight of it, and then stands back up and keeps moving forward. Same event. Same pain. Completely different outcome. And the difference was never luck. It was never that one of them cared less about what they lost. It was that one mind had already been built to bend without breaking. What separates them isn't visible from the outside. You can't see it in how they dress, how they talk, how confident they appear on an ordinary Tuesday. It only reveals itself the moment real pressure arrives, the moment life stops being convenient. That's the cruel part about mental strength. You never actually know how strong your own mind is until something tries to break it. And most people go their entire lives never finding out, because they've arranged everything around them specifically to avoid ever being tested. Which feels safe. But it's actually the most dangerous gamble a person can quietly make. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding exactly the thing that would make them unbreakable. They avoid the hard conversation. They avoid the uncomfortable workout. They avoid the risk, the rejection, the version of life that isn't smooth and padded and safe. And every time they avoid it, they feel a small wave of relief. But that relief has a hidden cost nobody warns you about. A mind that never gets tested stays soft. It stays exactly as fragile as it was on day one, quietly untouched, quietly unprepared for what's eventually coming for every single person alive. Then real pressure finally arrives, because it always does. A lost job. A breakup nobody saw coming. A diagnosis that changes everything overnight. And a mind that has spent years being protected from every hard thing doesn't bend under that kind of weight. It shatters completely, all at once, because nothing ever taught it how to hold pressure in smaller doses first. This is the trap of a comfortable life. It feels like safety every single day, right up until the one day it absolutely isn't, and by then it's far too late to start building what should have been built years earlier. Steel isn't born strong. It starts as soft, ordinary metal, and it only becomes unbreakable after it's heated until it glows, hammered until it's reshaped, and plunged into cold water again and again. Each cycle looks like destruction while it's actually happening. The metal screams, cracks, resists. But that exact process is what forges the strength that eventually makes it unbreakable. A human mind works precisely the same way. Comfort has never built a single unbreakable person in all of human history. Pressure did. Every time, without exception, it was pressure that did the work comfort could never do. So the hard season you're currently trying to escape, the setback, the struggle, the relationship that's testing you, the version of life that feels unfair and exhausting right now, that might not be your life falling apart at all. That might be the exact forge doing its exact job. It doesn't feel like strength while it's happening. It never does. It feels like heat, like pressure, like something that might break you completely. But if you survive it without quitting on yourself, you don't come out the same person who went in. You come out measurably harder to break. Think of a soldier who spent years in brutal training long before ever facing real danger. Freezing water at 4 a.m. Screamed orders. His body pushed past what felt physically survivable, over and over, for months. From the outside, it looked cruel, almost pointless, like punishment disguised as preparation. But years later, in an actual crisis, while everyone around him panicked and completely froze, he stayed calm, clear, functional. Not because he was fearless. Because his mind had already rehearsed chaos hundreds of times before it ever actually mattered in real life. The training was never really about the training itself. It was about making sure that when the real moment finally arrived, his nervous system would recognize it as familiar instead of catastrophic. That's the entire secret hiding inside every story about people who stayed calm under pressure that destroyed everyone else around them. They weren't born different. They simply rehearsed difficulty on their own terms long before life demanded it on its terms, so when the real emergency came, their mind had already been there before, and familiar things, even brutal ones, are far easier to survive than unfamiliar ones. There's real science behind why this works. When your body experiences manageable stress and then fully recovers, it doesn't just bounce back to exactly where it started. It adapts slightly stronger than before, a process researchers call stress inoculation. Your nervous system essentially learns, this level of pressure was survivable, and it quietly raises its own threshold for what counts as an emergency. It's the same principle behind a muscle getting stronger after being torn slightly and repaired. The tearing isn't the enemy. It's the mechanism. Difficulty, faced in doses you can recover from, is the actual training program for an unbreakable mind. People who avoid all discomfort never build that threshold. Their internal alarm system stays stuck on maximum sensitivity forever, so ordinary difficulty, a critical email, a delayed flight, a disagreement, gets processed as a 5-alarm crisis. Meanwhile, people who train under controlled pressure build a nervous system that simply requires far more to panic. Same objective event. Wildly different internal experience. Because one mind has calibrated itself against real difficulty before, and the other has spent years being protected from ever finding out what it can actually handle. This is why you'll meet people who seem to have had an easy, comfortable life, and yet the smallest inconvenience seems to destroy their entire week. And you'll meet other people who have survived genuinely brutal circumstances, and somehow nothing appears to rattle them anymore. It's not that one group suffers more than the other deserves, and it's not some unfair genetic gift. It's that one mind was tested repeatedly and adapted every single time, while the other was carefully protected from every test and simply stayed exactly as fragile as the day it started. And here's the part that should genuinely concern you. Fragility doesn't announce itself while things are going well. It hides perfectly behind a comfortable routine, a stable job, a predictable life, right up until the day something unpredictable finally happens, and it always eventually does. That's the moment fragility gets exposed publicly, painfully, usually at the worst possible time. Strength built quietly in private, on ordinary boring days, is the only kind of strength that actually shows up reliably when the real emergency finally arrives and everyone else around you is falling apart. So if comfort weakens the mind and pressure strengthens it, the obvious question becomes how you actually build this on purpose, safely, before life forces the uncontrolled version on you. You start by choosing small, deliberate doses of discomfort. Have the hard conversation you keep quietly postponing. Say no when it feels genuinely risky to your image. Push through the final rep after your body begs you to stop. None of these individual moments matter much on their own. But each one is a small controlled rep, a tiny dose of pressure your mind can recover from and grow stronger from. Do this consistently, and something quietly begins to shift inside you. Your baseline tolerance for difficulty rises without you even consciously noticing it happening day to day. Situations that used to trigger panic now barely register as inconvenient. Conversations that used to feel terrifying now feel merely uncomfortable, survivable, manageable. You haven't become a different person overnight. You've simply given your nervous system enough controlled exposure to recalibrate what it considers dangerous, the exact same way a soldier's mind recalibrates after training, except you're doing it gradually, deliberately, on your own ordinary terms. Eventually, something shifts permanently. The same setback that would have completely destroyed you a year ago barely moves you now. Not because life suddenly got easier on you. Because your capacity to hold weight got measurably bigger. That's what an unbreakable mind actually is underneath all the language around it. It's not the absence of pain, and it's not some cold refusal to feel anything difficult. It's simply a mind that has been tested enough times to know, with real earned certainty, that it can survive being tested again, no matter what specific form that test eventually takes. So stop asking life to go easier on you, because it was never designed to. Start asking yourself what small, manageable pressure you've been quietly avoiding today. The hard conversation. The uncomfortable habit. The risk that scares you slightly but wouldn't actually destroy you. Choose it deliberately, on your own terms, in a dose you can recover from. Do that consistently enough, and one day a crisis will arrive that would have shattered you completely a few years earlier, and you'll notice, almost calmly, that it simply didn't. That's not luck. That's a mind you built yourself, one deliberate rep at a time.